Hi, I'm Edward, and I'm proud to introduce the Marching Revolution podcast. Just a heads up, this show is powered by my AI workforce, so you won't be hearing my voice just yet. Instead, you'll be hearing two AI hosts bring these stories to life. Thanks for being here. Enjoy the show, and welcome to the revolution.
This is the Marching Revolution podcast.
Boots on the ground with a thunderous beat, hearts in sync, our purpose complete. Map of the future drawn by our stride, through the struggle we walk unified. Marching forward where no chains can hold, hands in the dirt we
All right, hey everyone, welcome to the Marching Revolution. Yeah, this is where we really dig into the stuff that matters in the marching arts world. We're big fans, just like you probably.
Yeah, definitely seasoned fans. And we're really excited today because we're kicking off something new, a mini-series.
That's right. We're calling it Story Drum Corps. The idea is to really get into some specific histories, some narratives that honestly maybe haven't gotten the spotlight they deserve.
Exactly. And for our very first one, we're jumping right into an article published right here in the Marching Revolution.
Yeah.
It's Erased Echoes, Where Are All the Black Drum Corps by Edward Michael Francis. Powerful stuff.
Oh, absolutely. That piece really, it lit a fire. You know, it made us think these Black Drum and Bugle Corps, they weren't just like a footnote. They were huge. They were communities.
Living, breathing parts of the community.
So our mission, I guess you could call it, for this deep dive is to really try and uncover that history. Understand the contributions, figure out maybe why we don't hear about them as much today, and, celebrate their legacy.
And we're not just going off that one article. As great as it is, we've pulled together quite a bit of material. We have firsthand accounts, from people who were actually in these corps.
Yeah, testimonies. Really powerful.
And there's this interesting PDF. It's from the DC Boys Club. The cover's got a picture of the Ambassador's Drum and Bugle Corps, the one from the Metropolitan Police in DC.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and we've got bits from a YouTube video transcript that's called African American Drum and Bugle Corps, plus some really good discussions from the Drum Corps Planet Forum. There's a thread. African American Corps then and now.
So a real mix of sources to paint the picture.
Right. Trying to get a fuller understanding,
Okay, so what's in it for you listening? Well, look, even if you think you know your drum corps history, I promise you, this is a perspective you might not have fully considered. It's pretty vital, honestly, to understanding how the whole activity got to where it is now.
You're definitely going to hear some things that might surprise you. It really deepens your appreciation for the whole scene, past and present.
So let's dig in. First off, it's crystal clear from everything we looked at. African American Drum and Bugle Corps, they were a major part of Black communities. We're talking like the 1950s, 60s, 70s especially.
Yeah, not just a niche thing. They were really woven into the community fabric. And what's really interesting is where they came from.
Right, like their origins.
They often grew out of places that were already central to the community. Churches were huge, providing space, maybe some initial support.
Makes sense.
Youth organizations, too, like the police athletic leagues, PLALs. The Wind Center Toppers, who we'll talk about more, they came out of a PL program.
Okay, wow.
And sometimes American Legion posts would get things started. It shows how embedded they were. There's even this group, the VIP group, whose whole mission is just documenting the history of these DC area Black Corps from that era.
That just underlines how important it was that someone's trying to preserve that specific history.
Yeah.
And that DC Boys Club PDF cover you mentioned with the ambassadors from the police department.
Yeah.
That really drives home the connection to like local groups, civic life. It wasn't just kids playing horns in a vacuum.
Not at all. And we saw this photo, right, from 1950.
Yeah, just, an early corps, drums, bugles. Looks simple, but it hints at this long history.
Definitely. And speaking of history, the Wind Center Toppers, they actually started way back 1946 as something called the Silver Buckles.
46?
Yeah, then became a full drum corps in 53. So this wasn't just some fad, it had deep roots.
Deep roots, absolutely. But, and this is crucial, they weren't operating in some kind of ideal world, right?
Oh, absolutely not. That's maybe the most important context. Harold Craig Barber, who shared a lot of reflections, puts it really well. He talks about how Black communities produce these excellent and proficient corps.
Yeah.
despite facing just constant racial prejudice, systemic exclusion. I mean, just think about the era.
Yeah, the background noise is, well, it's not noise, it's a defining factor. Barber's own memories really bring this to life. He talks about marching in a parade, I think it was with the Carter Cadets, and this huge crowd just starts following them down the street.
Yeah.
Just pure community pride, you know.
You can almost picture it, the energy.
Totally. And he said something fascinating, being in one of those top black corps back then. It was like being a major recording star in your own neighborhood. That level of respect, of recognition.
That's incredible. It really paints a picture of how central they were. He also mentioned how people would always be asking corps members, when's rehearsal? Where's the next contest? How can my kid join?
Wow. Constant buzz.
Yeah, it shows they weren't just performing for the community. They were the community in a big way. It was about belonging, about pride, about something positive to rally around.
But then the story takes a turn. Because, you look around today's marching scene, and where are they? That's the core question in Francis's article.
It is, and Barber himself reflects on this really poignantly. He says something like, when I think about how African-American drum and bugle corps once permeated the inner-city landscape, I ponder how a much-loved activity in my community dried up over the years.
Dried up. Such a sad way to put it, but probably accurate.
And the sources, especially Erase Echoes, argue really strongly that this wasn't like an accident. It wasn't just that tastes changed or whatever.
Right. Not accidental.
No, it was a result of systemic issues. Systemic erasure, Francis calls it.
Right.
A whole combination of factors just stacked against them.
What kinds of factors are we talking about?
Well, think about the basics. Equipment, right. Often they were dealing with secondhand stuff, maybe things that weren't reliable. Cast-offs sometimes.
Okay.
Transportation, getting everyone to rehearsals, getting to competitions, especially further away, huge logistical nightmare, often relying on unreliable vehicles.
I can only imagine.
Then there was housing discrimination when they tried to travel, finding places for the corps to stay, major hurdle, limiting how far they could go, who they could compete against. Media coverage, almost non-existent, especially compared to white corps. So less visibility, fewer chances for sponsorship, less recognition in the wider world.
So they're kept kind of invisible.
Exactly. And underpinning it all, just the economic reality. They were based in communities that often faced significant economic challenges. Funding was a constant struggle.
It's just hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. And the article points out something else interesting about integration.
Yeah, that's a really complex point because you think, okay, integration, that solves the problem, right? Everyone marches together.
Seems like progress on the surface.
But it wasn't that simple. Black performers who did join predominantly white corps often faced, a whole different set of problems. Microaggressions, those subtle but constant digs.
Right. Death by 1,000 cuts sort of thing.
Yeah. And pressure to, fit in, maybe downplay their own cultural background. Code switching, basically.
Exhausting.
And then just being tokenized. Their presence was valued for appearance, for diversity points maybe, rather than for their actual talent and what they brought culturally.
There's that quote in the article, right? They wanted my flair, not my culture.
Oof.
Yeah.
That says it all, doesn't it? Just brutal.
It really does. But despite all that, the impact these corps had on the young people in them was just incredibly positive.
Oh, massively positive. You hear that again and again. Barber says flat out the activity did a lot of shaping us into fine adults.
What kind of lessons?
The fundamentals, really. Discipline, punctuality, you had to be on time. Teamwork, couldn't do it alone. Working hard, respecting authority, respecting the flag, the country. Basic building blocks for life.
Yeah. Structure, purpose. We also heard from Danny Holder, right? From Wind Center Toppers.
Yes, his perspective was powerful too. He saw the corps as actively keeping kids out of trouble, giving them something positive, engaging, demanding to focus on, instead of, negative influences that might have been around.
So it wasn't just music lessons. It was life lessons, mentorship, community building from the inside out.
Absolutely. It was a whole support system.
Okay. So if they were so important, so impactful, why did they decline? What were the big contributing factors, according to the sources?
Well, Barber points to a couple of key things. Cost is definitely one. Running a drum corps just got more and more expensive over time. New instruments, uniforms, travel. Right. It all adds up.
Sure, that affects everyone, but maybe disproportionately hits communities with fewer resources.
Exactly. But maybe even bigger was a shift in the activity itself. Drum Corps kind of started moving away from its traditional roots in those inner city communities. Geographically, maybe becoming more suburban, and also moving away from those traditional support structures we talked about, the churches, the VFW posts, the American Legion halls. Those groups weren't sponsoring Corps as much anymore, or the Corps were evolving beyond what they could support.
Oh, okay. So the foundation's weakened.
Right. Barber puts it very directly. He says, as Drum Corps began to evolve and move away from our communities, churches, VFW, and American Legion posts and other organizations that once supported and nurtured the activity left behind the African-American inner-city kids.
Wow. Left behind. That's stark. It suggests, even if it wasn't intentional malice, the changes in the activity had this consequence of cutting off access for a whole group of kids.
Precisely. The evolution had unintended but devastating consequences for these specific communities.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly.
Well,
While this was happening nationally, some areas were real hotspots for Black Drum Corps, right?
definitely. And one place that comes up again and again is Washington, D.C.
D.C.
Yeah, the Erased Echoes article specifically calls out D.C. as having this incredibly thriving, vibrant Black Corps scene, a real powerhouse.
So we should probably name them right. Give them their due. Who are these D.C. Corps?
Absolutely. Let's see. Based on the sources, we have the Ambassadors. Remember them from the Boys Club PDF cover?
Right, the police-sponsored one.
Then there were the Lancers of D.C., the Royal Eagles, the Royal Sabres,
Okay, Eagle Sabres, got it.
the Starlighters, the VIP Drum and Bugle Corps, and the Boys Club Corps itself.
7, right? That's a lot for one city.
It is. Wait, actually, let me double check the article and that PDF info. Yes, okay. The Ambassadors were linked to the Metropolitan Police, and Francis's article also lists a corps called VIPs, which seems distinct from the VIP Drum and Bugle Corps.
Ah, so that makes 8.
That makes 8 confirmed DC Corps we can name. Ambassadors, Lancers of DC, Royal Eagles, Royal Sabres, Starlighters, VIP Drum and Bugle Corps, Boys Club, and VIPs.
8 corps.
Yeah.
Just incredible. Really shows D.C. was a major center.
No question. But, you know, it wasn't only DC. This was happening all over the country. And that Facebook group, African American Drum Corps Then and Now, has done amazing work trying to compile a bigger list.
Yeah, the article credits them. It's crowdsourced history, in a way.
Totally. And it's important to say, even that list is probably incomplete. There were likely more. But we need to read out the names they have gathered. We need to say their names.
Absolutely. Let's do it. This is crucial. Okay, besides the D.C. Corps, here are the others we need to remember. You ready?
Ready? Let's honor them.
Okay, number 1, there's another Ambassadors. This one from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay, Brooklyn Ambassadors. Got it.
American Woodmen Cadets from St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis. Okay.
Annapolis Drum and Bugle Corps from Annapolis, Maryland.
Annapolis. Makes sense.
Bronze Shields, Newark, New Jersey.
Newark. Okay.
Brooklyn Cadets. Brooklyn, New York again.
Brooklyn was clearly a hub, too.
Seems like it. Then there's just Cadets of Brooklyn. Maybe related, maybe different.
Noted.
Camp Minisink Warriors, New York City. Carver Gay Blades, also listed as Washington Carver, from Newark, New Jersey.
Newark again.
Carter Cadets, Brooklyn. The ones Barber marched with.
Right. Carter Cadets. Important one.
Cavaliers of Harlem, New York City.
Harlem. Okay.
CCMC Warriors. The Bronx, New York. Charles N. Robinson, Post 218 Drum Corps, Princeton, New Jersey. An American Legion connection there.
Ah, yeah. Princeton.
Compton Cavaliers, Compton, California. West Coast representation.
Good. Compton.
East Side Crusaders. Detroit, Michigan.
Detroit. Motor City represent.
Ebony Ambassadors, listed as being in various cities, maybe a network.
Interesting. Ebony Ambassadors.
Giles Yellow Jackets, Maywood, Illinois.
Maywood, IL. Okay.
Harlem Diplomats, New York City.
Another Harlem Corps.
Whole Trinity Cadets, Boston, Massachusetts.
Boston. Got it.
The Hornets, St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis again. Okay. The Hornets.
The AMZ Drum and Bugle Corps, Los Angeles, California.
LA.
Keystoners, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Philly. Keystoners.
Kewanee Black Knights, Kewanee, Illinois.
Kewanee, Illinois.
Okay. Lancers, also known as Memorial Lancers, Kinloch, Missouri. That's near St. Louis.
Kinloch Lancers. Okay.
Manhattaners, Harlem, New York City.
Manhattaners. Great name.
Mighty Starlights, Detroit, Michigan.
Detroit again. Mighty Starlights.
NYCHA Drum and Bugle Corps, New York City.
Yeah.
NYCHA is a housing authority, right?
Yeah, New York City Housing Authority. Wow. Shows that connection.
Definitely. NY Lancers, the Bronx.
The Bronx Lancers. Okay.
Page Park Cadets, St. Louis.
A lot of St. Louis Corps. Page Park?
Palmer's Cadets, Philadelphia.
Philly again. Palmer.
Quest Drum and Bugle Corps, Brooklyn.
Quest from Brooklyn.
Richmond Continentals, Staten Island, New York. The notes say possibly a guard unit or parade corps.
Okay, Richmond Continentals, Staten Island.
Riversiders, New York City.
Riversiders, NYC.
Royal Dukes, Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland, Royal Dukes.
The Saber's Edge, St. Louis.
Saber's Edge, St. Louis.
Southside Crusaders, Chicago, Illinois.
Chicago South Side.
Spirit of Newark, Newark, New Jersey.
Spirit of Newark, okay.
Spirit of St. Louis, St. Louis. A famous name, different context.
Yeah. Spirit of St. Louis Drum Corps.
St. Martin's Cadets, East Orange, New Jersey.
East Orange. St. Martin.
St. Paul's Cadets, Brooklyn.
St. Paul's, Brooklyn.
The Spearheads Drum and Bugle Corps, Brooklyn. Remember Sidney Austin helped them?
Right, the Spearheads. Yes.
Travelers, Harlem.
Travelers, Harlem.
Utopians.
Utopians, Brooklyn.
Wind Center, PL, St. Louis. Different from the Brooklyn Wind Center Corps.
Interesting. Wind Center, PL, St. Louis.
Then the Wind Center Toppers themselves from Brooklyn.
The famous Toppers. Yeah.
And finally, Yellow Jackets, Chicago.
Chicago Yellow Jackets. Okay.
That's 45 additional corps we just named.
45 plus the 8 from D.C. That's 53 corps. 53 names we've brought back into the conversation today.
53. And like you said, probably still not all of them. It's just staggering.
It really is. And seeing those old photos, you know, the group shots, the drum lines in formation, the parade pictures, it just makes them feel more real, you know, not just names on a list.
Absolutely. It gives them life.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the Wind Center Toppers a few times. They seem to really stand out in the sources.
They do. They come up quite a bit as a really prominent example, founded in Brooklyn, like we said, by Sidney E. Austin and Joseph Tucker.
And they were good, right? Like competition-wise.
Oh, yeah. Very successful. They won the New York State Championship back in 1959.
Wow, 59. That's early success.
Definitely. And then later, in the late 60s, they dominated the Long Island Drum Corps circuit, won it 3 years in a row, 68, 69, 70.
Consistent excellence.
Exactly. And what's amazing is their story didn't end when the original corps folded in 72.
Right, you mentioned they came back.
Yeah, they were revitalized in 1991. For 21 years, they performed as a parade and exhibition corps. 21 years.
That's incredible longevity and dedication. Just keeping the spirit alive.
And apparently now they exist as a brass ensemble, still making music.
Amazing. And we noted Sidney Austin, one of the founders, also helped other corps, like the Spearheads, spreading the knowledge.
Mm-hmm. And there's even a whole book about them, Precious Memories of the African American Drum and Bugle Corps. It focuses specifically on the Wind Center Toppers. That tells you something about their impact.
It really does. A lasting legacy. Now, beyond the specific corps, there were key people, right? Individuals who really shaped this history.
Absolutely. We've mentioned Harold Craig Barber several times. His efforts to share his memories and this history are just invaluable. Can't overstate that.
For sure. Who else comes up?
Well, the sources mention several names as, like, icons of African-American drum corps, people like Eugene Bennett, Billy Cobham, the famous drummer,
The Billy Cobham. Wow, I didn't know he came out of drum corps.
Apparently so. Also Bill Hightower, Saul Anthony, Bobby Winslow. These were figures looked up to within that world.
Okay, important names to remember. And obviously Austin and Tucker for the Wind Center Toppers.
Definitely. And then there's Jim Prime Jr., huge figure. He was the first Black DCI Hall of Fame inductee.
That's a major milestone. Huge.
Yeah, really significant. And that connects to something Brian Warfield talks about in that In Step Conversations podcast.
What's that?
Just the power of representation, seeing people who look like you in prominent positions. Warfield talks about seeing Darian Sanders conducting, and he said something like, that was the first time I'd ever seen anybody like that in that role. It just opens up possibilities in people's minds. It shows you what's achievable.
Yeah, that if you can see it, you can be it idea. It really matters.
It really does. But we also have to remember the flip side with those earlier experiences. The sources mention performers in those early integrated corps.
The ones who felt isolated.
Exactly. Feeling that extreme isolation, sometimes being the only non-white person there. It's a tough part of the history, but it's real. It shows that just being present wasn't always enough. True inclusion was and is harder work.
Yeah, a hard truth. So what's happening now? Are people actively working to preserve this history, to build on it?
Yes, definitely. There are ongoing efforts. We mentioned the VIP group in D.C. doing that focused documentation.
Right.
That Facebook group, African American Drum Corps Then and Now, is a living archive, constantly gathering stories and names. That's huge.
Yeah, community-driven preservation.
And looking ahead, there's the DCI African American Alumni Corps initiative. That's planned for 2027, I think.
Oh, interesting. An alumni corps specifically for that heritage.
Yeah, it seems like a really positive step towards celebration and recognition on a big stage.
That's great. And what about the conversations happening today, like the one with Jim Prime Jr. and Brian Warfield?
Well, they really hone in on access and representation now in today's drum corps world. How do we make sure the activity is truly open and welcoming?
Right. The podcast asks that question, doesn't it? How can marching music best serve Black communities, other minority communities going forward?
It's the question, really. And Warfield's point about seeing representation, how it encourages people, makes them feel like they belong, like there's a path for them, that's key to the answer, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there other, concrete examples of positive things happening now?
Well, the sources mention BAC Musical Instruments, apparently co-founded by a former drum corps person.
Okay.
And they're making a point to support youth music programs in diverse communities. Plus, they're working on practical stuff, like designing lighter instruments, thinking about the physical toll, making it more accessible.
Oh, that's interesting. Practical accessibility.
Yeah. And there's also an initiative mentioned, I think in Kansas City, trying to start a citywide marching band.
Like the Roots of Music program in New Orleans.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
Inspired by it. Trying to build something from the ground up to provide access and opportunity through marching music in underserved areas.
That's fantastic. Building new legacies.
Hopefully, yeah. Rebuilding some of those community connections.
So wrapping this all up, it's just so clear. These Black Drum and Bugle Corps, they weren't just about parades and competitions.
Not even close. They were pillars of the community, teaching discipline, teamwork, resilience, all those life skills we talked about.
And just fostering this incredible sense of cultural pride, of identity.
Immense cultural labor went into them, decades of it. And it's our job now, really, to remember that labor, to honor it.
Yeah, to recover the stories, make sure they're part of the whole story of the marching arts, not erased echoes anymore.
Exactly. Their role was essential, not optional, to the history.
Which brings us, I guess, to the final thought for you listening out there. Something to chew on. What kind of future does this activity that we all love actually want? Does it want a future that truly, genuinely values every marcher, every legacy, every single echo from the past, make sure everyone feels like they belong?
Or does it risk, maybe without even meaning to, just continuing to polish up its own history in a way that keeps certain stories, certain people on the margins, still erasing echoes?
Yeah, something to think about. What kind of activity do we want to build together?
A crucial question.
This has been the Marching Revolution.
Thank you for listening to the Marching Revolution podcast.
Hearts in sync, our
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Map of the future drawn by our stride. Through the struggle we walk unified. Marching forward where no chains can hold. Hands in the dirt, we carve out gold. From the ashes we rise, we sing. For the power of the people is everything. Flags that wave like the dawn's first light, guiding us through the endless night. Every step shakes the earth awake. Our voices roar for justice's sake. Marching forward where no chains can hold. Hands in the dirt, we carve out gold. From the ashes we rise, we sing. For the power of the people is everything. The rhythm of hope, it pounds in our chest. We won't stop until we've done our best. The world is ours to turn to flame, and from it we'll forge a brand new name. Yeah! Craft the future, the wheels won't stall. Shoulder to shoulder we answer the call. Brick by brick through sweat and strive. In unity together we thrive.